né, de debate sobre uma determinada situação, uma determinada política. Então, essa construção toda do sentido de uma viagem, do sentido de uma expedição cultural, do sentido de uma intervenção, né, que possa ser construída, né, na cidade, ela nasce desse encontro na Assembleia. Essas assembleias são coordenadas, né, por educadores, algumas referências, né, teóricas e metodológicas a gente se apoia, né, nos grupos operativos, na teoria dos grupos, né, então há essa referência de modo de conduzir um processo da Assembleia para que a fala circule, para que as expressões possam acontecer. Bom, então, esses somos nós. E nós também estamos, né? Então, nós estamos no território, nessa convivência cotidiana com as crianças, que no momento presencial eram bastante presentes. Agora, de fato, essa situação mudou, né? Tanto é que nós estamos também, Nick, planejando o nosso retorno, né? Como é que nós vamos retomar os encontros presenciais, já que as nossas escolas públicas aqui, elas estão fechadas e elas não têm um plano de retomada. Não há um plano ainda na cidade de São Vicente, né, da política educacional para a retomada progressiva das atividades presenciais, né, e das aulas e dos encontros na escola. Bom, o que isso gera, né? A pergunta é onde estão essas crianças? Se elas não estão na escola, por onde elas andam? Né? Onde elas estão? Elas estão conectadas com o sistema educacional por meio virtual? Grande parte delas não está. Não está pela questão do acesso mesmo, né, à internet, aos pacotes de dados, e também por um esgotamento, né, que as pessoas vão vivendo por estarem fazendo lições e tarefas, né, nas suas casas, muitas vezes com muita dificuldade de ter um espaço adequado, de ter apoio adequado para isso. Então, elas se retiraram, né, dessa relação com o processo educativo nesse tempo. E onde elas estão? Onde nós encontramos as crianças? Elas estão nos seus territórios, elas estão se encontrando, muitas vezes com muita dificuldade de adotar as medidas de proteção, né? E estão lá, estão vivendo, estão brincando, elas estão indo para as ruas da cidade, muitas delas saem desses territórios periféricos, como já foi citado aqui, inclusive para ir em busca do dinheiro, então se envolvem em situações de trabalho infantil e vão para as ruas. Outras vão para as ruas simplesmente para brincar, né? Então, se juntam, vão ao shopping center, que já abriu, né? Shopping abriu, né? O comércio abriu, o comércio ele está ativo, funcionando, as crianças vão para lá, né? As crianças vão brincar em espaços privados, em que a entrada delas não é admitida, e elas, transgressoras que são, elas pulam os muros e, por exemplo, de um clube, né, de um clube de golfe, imagine, né, um clube de golfe, golf clube, em que elas pulam porque lá dentro, né, tem lago para nadar, tem espaço para correr e para brincar, só que a presença delas lá não é admitida. Então, elas são perseguidas, elas são expulsas, são detidas, né? Então, há todo um processo, né, de criminalização, que, no nosso caso, passa pelo sistema de garantia de direitos, né, que o Estatuto da Criança e do Adolescente instituiu, o Conselho Tutelar, que é um órgão de vigilância de violação de direitos de crianças e adolescentes. Então, esses órgãos do sistema de direitos são acionados para fazer intervenções com esses grupos que cometem violação de direito com as crianças. Mas para onde elas estão indo? Elas estão indo para as ruas da cidade, se juntam em grupos e vão, né? E elas estão no território, né? Estão também nos seus próprios territórios. Então, é para lá que nós vamos, né? Então, nós estamos lá nos territórios, né? Fazendo esses encontros todos os dias da semana, em um determinado território, e aí, a partir daí, além, né, da organização para a ação, também é importante, né, nesse momento, destacar, nós estamos discutindo aqui situações e processos de pesquisa e pesquisa participativa, a presença dos pesquisadores, que vocês viram se apresentar aqui, né? O Paulo, o Marco Ackerman, que coordena uma pesquisa, a Maria Fernanda, a Rosilda, que se juntaram a nós com um olhar de pesquisa, com um olhar de pesquisadores e pesquisadoras, e no processo das assembleias vão reconhecendo, escutando ativamente, como a Nick falou, né? Processo ativo de escuta das falas das crianças, das falas de seus familiares. Isso vai gerando, né? Vai gerando propostas e temas e pautas que devem ser aprofundadas. Ontem discutimos a questão da alimentação dos bebês, né? Dos bebês, de jovens mães, muito jovens mães, né? Que têm os seus bebês e que ficam muito atrapalhadas diante da naturalização, assim, efeitos da pandemia que a gente observa, né? Que se evidenciam a naturalização de determinados modos de viver que não são levados a uma reflexão crítica sobre as condições que geram esse modo de enxergar, por exemplo, né, o cuidado de um bebê nas favelas. Como se cuidam dos bebês nas favelas? Quem cuida? Né? Como é que se compreende o vínculo mãe-bebê na primeiríssima infância, né, com essas mães que vivem mães jovens que vivem essas condições, né, que têm nas suas histórias repetições terríveis de processos de violência, de não acesso ao pensamento crítico, à reflexão crítica. Então, as assembleias também são esse momento, né, em que nos encontramos com o olhar do educador e da educadora, que promovem, né, a fala, que promovem a expressão, né, e também o olhar da pesquisadora e do pesquisador, né, que vão observando caminhos para o aprofundamento de determinadas pautas que devem se tornar campos de estudo, né? Então, das assembleias, por exemplo, se desdobram o que hoje nós estamos desenvolvendo, que são os grupos de estudo, que é um outro tempo, também nesse momento acontecendo virtualmente, o que é um drama, né? Mas estamos nós lá, né? Reunindo as crianças e os jovens, os adolescentes, em situações de estudar, pensar, refletir, produzir, escrever, assistir filmes, né? Nick, um filme que nos inspirou aqui, por exemplo, foi o Daniel Blake, né? O Daniel Blake tem uma cena no filme, né, em que a família, né, com muita necessidade, precisando do apoio da política pública, né, se desloca até lá um serviço e lá encontra as prateleiras com os alimentos, né, que ela sequer sabia que tinha o direito de escolher, né? Aqui nós fazemos todo esse debate com a entrega da cesta básica. O que é a cesta básica? Entrega de uma forma assistencialista, né, que não produz compreensão crítica das condições que geram a fome, a falta do alimento, e aí, inspirados no cinema, que é um dos grandes dispositivos também que a gente toma, né? A gente pegou aquela cena do Daniel Blake e inventamos um dispositivo chamado Quitanda Camarada, que é uma mercearia, né, ao estilo do filme, em que as pessoas vêm e elas conversam, se colocam numa roda de conversa para entender o que é que se passa, por quê? Por quê que falta o alimento para aquela comunidade, né? Então, é um processo crítico de reflexão, de estudo, né, pela arte, pelo cinema, pela poesia, né, e que acaba nos levando à criação desses espaços, né? Então, eu queria começar só com essa apresentação, porque tem um mundo de coisas aqui, situações que os demais trabalhadores que estão presentes aqui podem e devem, né, se manifestar. Então, para dizer isso. Tá? Aqui, ó, só volta aqui, Cássio, é mais um dispositivo, vocês sabem, né, do carnaval brasileiro, como ele é parte, né, da cultura brasileira, como uma grande manifestação cultural, né, que é o carnaval, que é o samba, né, que é a produção do desfile, que integra as comunidades em um projeto cultural bastante relevante, né, para a nossa cultura. E nós temos um bloco carnavalesco chamado Eureka, cuja tradução é Eu Reconheço o Estatuto da Criança e do Adolescente. Trata-se, na verdade, de um grande dispositivo de mobilização social pela garantia dos direitos humanos de crianças e adolescentes. Ele surgiu, na verdade, para levar para a rua, né, a nova compreensão da doutrina da proteção integral, né, a doutrina da ONU, que foi adotada pelo Estatuto da Criança e do Adolescente do Brasil, né, que inverte aquela situação que hoje estamos vivendo, né, a situação em que as crianças são tomadas como estando em situação irregular, quando, na verdade, né, irregular está o Estado, que não promove e não garante seus direitos. Então, esse é um movimento, né, no Carnaval, que acontece em várias cidades aqui do estado de São Paulo, e tem todo o processo, né? Como colocar uma escola de samba. Se vocês já viram algum desfile de uma escola de samba, lá do Rio de Janeiro, de São Paulo, tem todo um processo de construção do enredo, da história, né, das alegorias, da forma de contar a história, da composição do samba, da música, né, que vai contar a história. Então, isso também é um processo que, para nós, é bastante importante, porque tem uma força de mobilização muito grande, né? Então, para começar a nossa apresentação, eu queria só dizer isso, né? Quem somos nós, onde nós estamos, onde estão as crianças. Também queria dizer que outro lugar que a gente ocupa e está são os conselhos deliberativos de políticas públicas, né? Que foram dispositivos criados na Constituição brasileira de 1988 e que foram incluídos, né, no Estatuto da Criança e do Adolescente como uma forma de expansão da democracia, né? A democracia representativa não dá conta, né, de garantir a participação, por exemplo, a fala das crianças. Então, criou-se espaços que visam expandir a democracia participativa por meio desses espaços, né? Conselhos de direitos da criança e do adolescente, conselhos de assistência social, conselhos de saúde, conselhos de educação, em que essas experiências que a gente produz nos territórios são levadas como questões a serem debatidas quando da formulação das políticas públicas do município. Então, é isso para começar. E as perguntas, se porventura forem feitas, eu deixo aberto para os educadores, para os pesquisadores, para quem compõe o coletivo do Camará, poder também se manifestar. Ok, pessoal? Obrigado, gente.
Obrigado, João. Eu acho que você trouxe um quadro amplo, né, de todas as questões. Eu acho que dá para as pessoas fazerem perguntas. E queria que o José, a Vanessa, o Cássio, a Michele e a Valéria se sintam à vontade para fazer qualquer contribuição que agregue à apresentação do João. Alguém quer fazer alguma pergunta, alguma questão antes de passar para a próxima atividade? Zé,
Rosilda, viu, Marco? Rosilda, Maria Fernanda e Paulo também. Tá?
Tá ótimo. Não quis excluí-los, não, mas eu quis
Não, é porque eles têm uma participação bastante
Tá
importante
ótimo.
nesse processo.
Perfeito. Não, sim. Então está aberto para qualquer manifestação. A Suzane quer falar. Suzane, a palavra é sua, Suzane Bonner. Bem-vinda, querida, colega da
Olá.
Faculdade de Saúde Pública.
Isso, mundo
Bem-vinda.
pequeno, né? Que bom que todo mundo está aqui. Adorei as falas e queria talvez comentar sobre a última, porque acho que tocou num tema muito importante, né? De onde estão os jovens, né? No meu projeto, eu comecei a trabalhar em Franco da Rocha, na periferia de São Paulo, no começo do ano. Eu trabalhei com centros sociais, nos CRAS, com grupos no CRAS, e começou tudo bem até o Covid chegar, né? Daí eu estou na batalha com esse tema também da falta de acesso dos jovens à tecnologia, né? Porque muitos não têm celular, usam o celular dos pais, não têm como se comunicar. O CRAS está fechado, também está sendo demolido por outras razões, né? Fora do Covid, nem tem um espaço físico para se juntar. Agora, uma nova iniciativa do CRAS é tentar fazer coisas por grupos de WhatsApp. Eles tentaram recrutar novos jovens, porque era um grupo dos jovens que eles trabalham que não era já institucionalizado, né? Eram jovens que às vezes apareciam, às vezes vinham uma semana, outra semana não. Eu, como pesquisadora, só cheguei aí 3, 4 vezes, então não tenho um vínculo assim, de confiança com os jovens. E para mim é muito difícil, né, pensar nessa situação agora, como que posso eu fazer, também sendo um pouco, bom, não parte de uma rede, de um projeto grande, né, digamos, eu sou meu projeto, para mim é muito difícil como indivíduo de como lidar com essa situação agora, né, talvez só para abrir um debate, nem espero nem respostas, porque é difícil para todo mundo, né, mas eu acho que dá para pensar, talvez, em possibilidades, né, de como entrar em contato com os jovens, de como criar um vínculo também, talvez por meio online, mas e atingir aqueles que não têm esse acesso, né? Como lidar com essa realidade nova. Obrigada.
Excuse me, there seems to be, Marco and interpreters, a problem with the sound, with the interpreting on the English channel. We can hear Suzanne speak in Portuguese at the same time as the interpreter. It's a technical thing.
Would you like me to repeat in English, maybe?
Thank you. Yes, please.
No, but it was different because in the beginning, the Portuguese, you hear it in the background, and now it was at the same level, the English and Portuguese.
Correct.
Would you like me to summarize quickly in English what I said, just for everybody to be maybe
Yes,
in the same?
Yes,
summarize,
please.
Susan,
Yes,
please.
Yeah, okay. I just said it was really great to have these presentations, and especially for myself. I'm working in the University of São Paulo with young people in the periphery of São Paulo. I've been starting work through social centers earlier this year before COVID happened, but I was just able to go a couple of times, so the trust building wasn't, as deep as it could have been ideally, at the point when COVID happened and stopped these activities. And the question of where are the young people, how can we find them, especially since, more institutionalized places such as schools or social centers are being closed. We don't have these, spaces in person. And like in my case, I have the same situation that young people don't have access to phones. Maybe they use their parents' phones. They don't have access to, data to send videos or really interact. So at the moment, one of our new attempts is to try and interact with the young people through a WhatsApp group that was established by the community center. But I think it seems to be very difficult. Not everybody has access. And then how do you build trust online? And it's not going to be participatory anyway, because I can ask some questions and maybe have them reply. But so how to get in touch with those who are left behind, and how to find them, let's say, when you're working as an individual researcher. In my case, like I said, I am my project. I'm not really part of an NGO or a larger team of researchers. So that's an additional challenge maybe. And also being a German in Brazil. So there's a lot of, different aspects. So I think it's a really nice, maybe just opening the ground for debate and discussion reflections. I think having an answer is probably not what I'm looking for because everybody's struggling, but maybe just opening up this, how can we find the young people, or how can we get together again in this new setting of COVID?
Obrigado, Suzane. Eu tenho duas pessoas querendo falar, a Pamela e o Didier. Para não atrasar demais o nosso evento, eu queria então sugerir que se alguém quiser se inscrever enquanto a Pamela e o Didier estão falando, a gente considera. Aí depois eu vou fazer uma consulta para vocês se a gente faz um intervalo ou se a gente já passa para a Nina e a Rebeca apresentarem. Depois da fala do Didier e da Pamela, eu abro de novo para os amigos do Camará para responder, para dialogar com essas questões que estão sendo faladas. Pode ser assim? Tá, obrigado. Então, a Pamela e depois o Didier. Sem microfone, Pam. A palavra mais dita na pandemia. Isso.
Desculpa. João, colegas do Instituto Camará, Valéria, Cássio, Rosilda, Marco. Acho que parabéns pelo trabalho, né? Trabalho lindo, corajoso, político, né? É um trabalho que toma a produção de saúde a partir do território, das necessidades das pessoas. Então, eu gostaria de te perguntar, João, ou os outros colegas, por favor, que quiserem responder, em relação aos instrumentos participativos. Eu estou fazendo uma pesquisa um pouco parecida, mais no contexto da escola, e eu utilizo a roda de conversa como um dos instrumentos. E aí eu queria saber de vocês, as assembleias, os instrumentos que vocês utilizam são as rodas de conversa, somente as rodas, ou se vocês sentiram necessidade em algum momento de utilizar outro instrumento que favorecesse a criação de espaço de fala para esses jovens, né? Acho que essa é a primeira questão. E a segunda na modalidade virtual, exatamente como vocês estão fazendo. WhatsApp, qual plataforma vocês estão utilizando? Seria mais isso mesmo. Obrigada.
Obrigado, Pam. Eu vou passar para o Didier e depois eu abro para os colegas, amigos, queridos do Instituto Camará. Didier, the floor is yours now, querido.
Oh, thank you so much. For me, it's a very brief question. I'm really impressed by what you did, and I have the same vision as Pam. But my question is the sustainability. How do we ensure that we are in a long-term process that is not too much dependent on the political change, on the change of the people, on the changes on the funding, on the changes or the general orientation of the management of such a project? For me, the long-term view, what makes that kind of major initiative sustainable?
Ok. 23 anos de sustentabilidade até agora. Queridos, a palavra está com vocês.
Exactly.
Se Mafê, Paulo e Rosilda quiserem também falar, fiquem à vontade, mas a palavra é de vocês para interagir com essas questões. Depois a gente consulta a Nina e a Rebeca se a gente faz um intervalo ou se passa para a fala delas. Queridos, podem falar.
Posso começar?
Sim, Vanessa, por favor, querida.
Beleza. Vou usar de ponto de partida sua fala, Pamela, porque você traz do instrumento e eu acho que isso traz outros elementos também, assim. Eu acho que o primeiro passo para acontecer todo esse processo é, de fato, ter uma presença, né, que sustenta outras presenças no território. A Suzane falou, né, em um determinado momento, né, minha dificuldade é como chegar, tem muito a ver com isso. Né? Eu tô no território do Quarentenário, na área continental de São Vicente, onde a gente tem a assembleia mais antiga do Instituto, então aí da sustentabilidade, né? Às vezes sem recurso, um recurso daqui, outro dali, mas a gente sempre investe e insiste em estar juntos, né? E a partir da roda, é uma roda, né? A assembleia é uma roda, e dali surgem outras propostas, assim, acho que essa participação, o reconhecimento da participação das crianças vem muito a partir do que a gente, de fato, leva até o final das propostas que surgem. Então, por exemplo, em uma assembleia, no ano passado, acho que tem duas cenas que eu acho que dá para visualizar bem, uma que é numa assembleia na qual uma criança de 8 anos de idade levantou a mão, né, pegou a palavra, e aí ela colocou uma questão, que só poderia colocar por ter muita confiança naquele ambiente com mais de 30, 40 pessoas, né? Ela falou, olha, na minha casa, eu já vi minha mãe apanhar algumas vezes, e aí eu fui pesquisar e descobri que várias mulheres apanham. Vocês sabiam que várias mulheres apanham? Eu acho que a gente precisava saber mais sobre isso, assim, né? O que acontece, enfim. E isso se desdobrou, né? Então foram muitos diálogos, muitos outros desejos de pesquisa que surgiram. Escrevemos uma proposta juntos do Centro de Memória e Pesquisa do Território, né, buscando sustentabilidade para levar adiante essa iniciativa, por exemplo. E outros espaços são criados a partir dali. Então, tem um grupo, também na Assembleia, né, surgiu a necessidade da gente ter um grupo de crianças para conviver, para estudar, para explorar a liberdade, né? Surgiu um grupo de crianças que se auto-intitulou os Exploradores pela Liberdade, esse é o nome do grupo, e que é um grupo que escreveu um projeto, concebeu um projeto, que a gente entregou para o Fundo Municipal dos Direitos da Criança e do Adolescente, e aí a gente vai caçando jeito, né? Caçando jeito de sustentar essa experiência, e aí é caçar jeito mesmo, assim. Doação, campanha, o que a gente faz é a gente ter um desenho da nossa atuação. É importante ter clareza de que a Assembleia é um espaço de deliberação do Instituto. Então, se lá na Assembleia a gente deliberou que a gente vai levar adiante a proposta do Centro de Memória e Pesquisa do Território, está deliberado. Agora a gente caça o jeito de ter o recurso, mas mantém o mínimo da presença, né? E o mínimo da presença é esse conjunto de educadores que vocês estão conhecendo hoje, né? Somos nós. E, bom, não vou me estender muito porque outras respostas, mas só para dar um pouco de um caminho aí do que está rolando.
Bacana, obrigado, Vanessa. Alguém mais? Uma notícia boa é que a Rebeca tem tempo e depois da fala do camarada a gente vai poder fazer um break, uma parada, um intervalo, e depois a gente passa para a Rebeca e a Nina. Mais
Vou
alguma...
complementar, Marco, posso?
Pois não, lógico, Cássio, por favor, querido.
Para complementar um pouco a fala da Vanessa, Pamela, a gente sempre parte da roda, mas a roda ela sempre se abre, né, para criar outras rodas, outros espaços. Então, desta roda da Assembleia se delibera outros grupos, outras atividades que a gente pode, sei lá, chamar de comissões, chamar de outros grupos mesmo, que vão ter seus próprios nomes, com pessoas que podem, naquele momento, naquele horário, que estão interessadas naquilo, e elas vão se desdobrando e sempre retornando à Assembleia, né? Então, ela tem esse movimento de abertura e de retorno, porque como a Assembleia é sempre semanal, toda semana nós estamos lá, os grupos sempre têm um momento para poder trazer o seu repasse, para poder contar o que estão produzindo e retornando. Então, é um espaço de grupo e um espaço de coletivos, né? Na perspectiva, eu penso, da sustentabilidade, para a gente poder pensar um pouco nisso, eu acho que primeiro a gente tem um compromisso muito sério com o trabalho e as crianças, ao longo do tempo, né, todos que são parte desse grupo, dessa assembleia, sabem que estaremos ali, naquele horário, naquele local, e eu penso que grande parte da sustentação desse longo trabalho que o camarada tem é esse compromisso de que nós vamos estar lá. Faça chuva, faça sol, tenha enchentes, o que mais aconteça, nós estaremos lá. E a partir desta sustentação, que é uma sustentação ética, uma sustentação de grupo, de coletivo, a gente vai encontrando as outras sustentações necessárias, que são muitas, né? Da ordem da estrutura, da ordem do financeiro. E vamos discutindo com as crianças, com os jovens, como encontrar recursos financeiros, recursos de estrutura para dar conta daquelas demandas, que podem ser desde a escola não quer receber mais o grupo, então fechou-se a porta e temos nós aqui, né? Então, onde nos reunimos? Então, pode ser na minha casa essa semana, na semana seguinte na minha casa, e a gente também vai até um lugar, um conselho de política pública, para reivindicar esse lugar, ou as crianças podem ir junto aos educadores com a direção da escola, reivindicar de volta o lugar da escola como espaço de reunião, e também na construção de projetos para pleitear também os financiamentos, né? de diversas ordens. E também na associação com a universidade, né? A universidade pública é uma parceira muito forte nossa, porque ela é uma universidade pública, né? Ela é uma instituição sólida. Então, ela está lá também, né? Tem um compromisso forte de acompanhamento, porque é uma instituição que vai permanecendo, né? Isso ajuda a sustentar o trabalho. Muitas vezes, em momentos mais difíceis financeiramente, a universidade esteve, né, apoiando o trabalho com estudantes, com professores que dedicam o seu trabalho a isso, né? Então, muita da nossa sustentação ela tem a ver com os recursos humanos que temos e o compromisso humano que temos para poder ir atrás das outras estruturas que sustentam o trabalho.
Obrigado, Cássio. Paulo, você quer falar, querido?
Marco, eu queria também falar uma coisa.
Pois não, Rosilda. O Paulo, você fala e depois Rosilda, Rosilda e Paulo. Fiquem à vontade.
Pode ficar à vontade, Rosilda. Eu falo depois, não tem problema.
É uma questão que, na verdade, eu acho que eu me coloco e coloco para a reflexão desse grupo também, né? Que eu fico sempre pensando qual é o papel, né, do pesquisador num processo desses de pesquisa participativa. Eu acho que eu tenho pensado muito nisso e, na verdade, eu acho que nessa última semana eu participei de 40, né, reuniões com as famílias num determinado território junto aos educadores aí do Instituto Camará. Ou seja, 40 semanas seguidas, né, todas as terças-feiras, das 6 da tarde às 8 da noite. Então, eu fico pensando sempre que lugar é esse, né, do pesquisador, que eu tenho dito isso, que a gente tem que abrir-se à escuta. E abrir-se à escuta significa também a gente pensar o que é o processo de pesquisar. Eu acho que não existe nesse processo de pesquisa participativa um a priori. Embora a gente sempre, como pesquisador, queira, né, testar uma hipótese, seguir objetivos já determinados anteriormente. Então, a gente fica em busca de querer saber, talvez, coisas que a gente já saiba, né? Eu acho que a gente tem que rever isso. E eu acho que a implicação do pesquisador ela é muito importante, que vai significar outras formas de pesquisar. Talvez a gente não tenha fórmulas para isso, mas a gente vai ter que encontrar alguns caminhos que são alternativos àquelas pesquisas que são mais tradicionais, porque essa talvez seja a única forma da gente conseguir, né, juntar, né, conhecimento, né, perspectiva, pensar junto o que fazer. Isso não é fácil, né? Para a gente que está na academia, para a gente que tem um lugar, né, é muito difícil. Então, eu acho que a gente tem que se colocar o tempo inteiro, né, ficar muito atentos. Eu acho que é isso.
Obrigado, Rô. Eu passo para o Paulo. Depois do Paulo, nós vamos fazer um intervalo, tá bom? De 10 minutos para esticar a perna e depois voltamos diretamente com a Rebeca e com a Nina, que vão fazer a apresentação. Eu consultei a Rebeca e ela pode ficar mais um tempo, e então nós vamos fazer desse jeito para a gente não ficar muito cansado. Paulo, eu te passo a palavra, querido.
Obrigado, Marco. Na verdade, a minha colocação ela é rápida, objetiva, e vai em função, principalmente do questionamento do Didier, sobre uma sustentabilidade de longo prazo. E, na verdade, uma fala que complementa as que me antecederam, porque também com uma perspectiva um pouco subjetiva e pessoal, a de que um projeto como este do Instituto Camará, e a forma como ele vem se estabelecendo e apoiando-se na questão das assembleias, ele envolve, na verdade, além de questões concretas que são importantes, mas que, de certa forma, se ligam a uma certa necessidade imediata, mas, de fato, existe uma questão de fundo, que é a grande essência, ao meu ver, de sustentabilidade de longo prazo no projeto como um todo, que é a capacidade de mudança cultural pela resiliência que essas crianças, que esses jovens compreendem ser possível. Mais do que acreditar na capacidade da integração, da participação, da discussão, de ter uma voz, é a possibilidade de uma mudança cultural, porque me parece que esses jovens, essas crianças, ao desenvolverem suas vidas e envelhecerem, levarão para si e para a sociedade uma mudança na interpretação dela, por uma visão mais crítica, por uma visão muito mais pautada numa realidade e da realidade local. Então, há uma mudança aí que se observa, né? Até mesmo pela atuação. Aqui vou usar rapidamente um exemplo, a própria Vanessa, que está atuante no Camará e começou, acredito, que por conta dessa mudança cultural. Me corrija, Vanessa, se eu estiver errado, mas eu imagino que a Vanessa deve ter, né, na sua vida uma passagem, e nessa passagem, no desenvolvimento da sua vida, né, um olhar da mudança que representou participar do Camará. Eu aqui uso um exemplo porque vejo como uma liderança que se forma, vejo como alguém que compreende o processo, e aqui só estou usando um exemplo, né, para identificar qual a representação desta sustentabilidade. E é isso que, de fato, difere questões, porque na colocação que Suzane fez a respeito da sua dificuldade na pesquisa, né, numa outra cidade da Grande São Paulo, né, você tem os poderes que se envolvem ali. Então, pensar em São Vicente com a limitação do poder público local, né, e com as dificuldades que o João apresentou para as pessoas, mais do que ações pontuadas na necessidade, de certa forma, numa visão imediata, existe uma mudança cultural. O brasileiro em si, a pessoa em si, acreditando que é possível, permitindo-se, né, ter a resiliência das mudanças. Me parece que, nesse sentido, há uma grande formação que se passa quando se participa desse tipo de projeto. Tá bom? Era essa a minha fala. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Paulo. Amanhã, pessoal, nós vamos ter pequenos grupos onde nós vamos aprofundar essas temáticas. Rosilda traz a discussão do papel do pesquisador, o que pesquisar, a Pamela e a Suzane falam de metodologias, o João trouxe muito a discussão da simetria de poderes, né? E a questão da sustentabilidade. Então, a ideia dos casos é para eles ativarem nossa conversa, tá certo? Amanhã nós vamos estar voltando a isso tudo. Estamos gravando, aliás, esquecemos de pedir autorização para vocês para gravar, mas se alguém for contra, fale que a gente para a gravação, desculpem. Mas
a Valéria pediu no chat.
Eu não vi. Desculpa, Valéria. Então é o seguinte, a gente passa a palavra, garante a fala da Valéria e vai para o intervalo. 1000 perdões, eu não vi no chat, viu, querida? Pois não, Valéria, a palavra é sua, meu amor.
Não, tudo bem também. Acho que a gente também vai ter espaços amanhã, né, para poder conversar e compartilhar. O que eu queria trazer relacionado às 3 perguntas, né, que eu acho que elas se encaixam bem, que é como estar perto dos jovens, né, em tempo da pandemia, como garantir a sustentabilidade da instituição e como a gente poder pensar nessa didática, nessa metodologia, né, que parte do método da roda. O que eu fiquei pensando é que a gente tem aí uma sensação, as pessoas, os participantes, as crianças, elas têm um sentimento de pertence com o Camará. Elas se sentem úteis, elas se sentem importantes, elas sabem que elas também têm vozes e têm vezes e que podem propor, né? E aí isso dá um lugar de segurança. Isso, dentro de um processo acompanhado, promove a construção de um pensamento para uma autonomia participativa, para uma autonomia coletiva, né? Então, quando uma criança está num processo, por exemplo, né, da assembleia ou dessa questão da Covid, né? Então, a gente está aí 8 meses com o trabalho à distância. Para a gente foi uma questão, né? A gente pensar como que a gente continuava com as assembleias, com os acompanhamentos com as famílias, com as pessoas, com um grupo de dança, né, com as conversas, com o grupo de baterias, atividades culturais, como que nós estaremos com as pessoas, como que a gente estaria no território. E essas indagações todas, elas foram levadas para as pessoas. E aí a gente foi construindo junto com elas esse percurso. Então, como é que a gente vai fazer? Daí elas traziam. Tem gente que não tem celular, tem gente que não tem rede, tem gente que tem celular, mas só alcança o WhatsApp, não alcança o Google Meet. E aí a gente começou primeiro pelo WhatsApp, que era uma plataforma que todo mundo conseguia acessar. Depois a gente foi para o Zoom, aí a gente via que tinha lá questão, porque ele era pago, então só podia ficar 40 minutos, e aí cortava as atividades, a gente tinha que voltar tudo de novo, nisso as pessoas caíam. E aí a gente chega no Google Meet, e quando a gente chega no Google Meet, a gente percebe que era uma plataforma que puxava muito mais internet, que as pessoas ficavam sem acessar, e daí a gente trazia essas questões, né? Como que a gente vai estar com as pessoas que não conseguem acessar? De que modo que a gente chega até elas? E aí a gente promove uma extensão. E como que é essa extensão? É pensar nas pessoas que estão nos territórios. Então, um grupo de mulheres, por exemplo, pensa, nós somos extensão. Então, a gente vai criar comissões nos territórios. E aí, em tempo de pandemia, nasce referências nos territórios. Pessoas que se sentem pertencentes ao seu lugar, se sentem pertencentes à sua vida e se sentem pertencentes ao camará. E daí elas conseguem se colocar numa posição de ponte. E daí elas podem oferecer o Wi-Fi da casa delas, elas podem pensar em levar alimento que a gente teve doação até a casa das pessoas. Elas conseguiam pensar quem eram as pessoas que precisavam mais de alimento, quem eram as pessoas que precisavam menos. E as próprias crianças também entrando nesse movimento, né? Como que a gente vai estudar? Quem está conseguindo pegar as apostilas na escola? As pessoas não têm impressora em casa, as escolas são pobres, elas não dão apostila algumas. Então, o camará vai imprimir. Para quem que o camará vai imprimir? Todas essas questões, elas foram levadas para as pessoas. Então, eu, por exemplo, eu sou formada em pedagogia e dança. E eu entrei no camará com 13 anos, grávida. E daí, para mim, eu fiquei pensando, e agora? Eu sou uma inútil nesse mundo, eu só causo problemas. E daí, quando você entra para um processo que você é olhada, para mim foi isso, né? Eu com 13 anos fui olhada para além da minha barriga. Eu tinha um bebê ali e o bebê cresceu e eu apaguei, diminuí. E aí, quando você chega num lugar que você é olhado para além da sua barriga, que te veem como um sujeito que você tem algo para compartilhar, que você pode ser útil para o mundo, né? Isso te dá uma sensação de pertence. E você faz parte. Então, atualmente, no Camará, a gente tem as extensões, que elas são levadas para as mulheres, para as crianças, para os adolescentes, para os jovens. A gente vai criando formas de poder conversar com as pessoas, formas de estar junto com as pessoas, de uma forma junto com as pessoas. E daí, por exemplo, a nossa sustentabilidade vai partir disso. Atualmente, a gente está escrevendo um plano de retomada, né? E as crianças estão fazendo parte desse plano de retomada. A gente pensa numa construção de projeto, né? Que as crianças ajudam a escrever esse projeto, que vai partir das experiências das pessoas. Então, eu acho que essa é o que dá essa sustentação para o Camará. Esse método, né? De nós não somos uma instituição que vamos escrever projetos para desenvolver nos territórios. Nós não somos educadores dos territórios, né? Nós somos um coletivo de educadores, de pessoas que vai ter atuação junto com as pessoas, nos territórios das pessoas, fazendo com que esse caminho seja recíproco, sempre de mão dupla. Desculpa ter falado muito, mas era essa questão que eu queria trazer.
Obrigado, Valéria. Importante você trouxe seu depoimento. É interessantíssimo isso, pessoal. Eles hoje são parte do staff, mas eles vieram dessa base de participação. Então, o pertencimento veio vindo. Então, a sustentabilidade tem a ver com manter o pertencimento ao longo do tempo, né? Vamos esticar as pernas, fazer um xixi, beber uma água e tomar um café. e nós voltamos diretamente para a apresentação da Rebeca e da Nina. E peço desculpas por a gente ter Nina e Rebeca atrasado o tempo, mas eu acho que a gente está dando o devido ritmo que as pessoas precisam, tá bom? E, Nina, alguma notícia de Nevada?
Ainda não.
Ok.
Estamos esperando muito. We're waiting.
Ok, pessoal, ó, 12h15, 12h25, nós voltamos para escutar outra bela experiência da Rebeca e da Nina. Muito obrigado. Vamos dar uma descansadinha.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We realized...
I think that was a good idea for you to put the questions in the chat, and then
yes.
Okay, carry on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please, I'll ask you to look at your WooClap again, and Sylvia will put the link in the chat box, so you can already answer the question in the aim of creating a framework for listening and combining different sources of knowledge. What do you learn from these case studies you hear? So please add your feedback and your comments into the WooClap. So you can see that on your device. It worked very well earlier on, so I'm sure we can do that again. And then...
Sylvia, it's not clickable. Make it clickable.
Sylvia is asked to make it clickable. Okay. And you can also use it on your mobile phone or other device. That works very well, usually.
Okay.
Now, we know we are running late. So what we suppose is that we have our next speakers, which is Rebecca and Nina. And then we do the questions and answers and then continue the workshop tomorrow. So we go on till my time in Central European time, 5 o'clock. Okay.
Which is 1 Brazilian time.
and who knows, it's 12 in Taiwan time, 12 a.m., p.m. Oh, confusing. Anyway, I'm very happy to introduce to you Rebecca Bre. She is a very good colleague and friend of Marco. Rebecca, you are new to me, but I'm very, very happy that you have found the time to give us an introduction about your program, which is called Arrest Riders. I've read about it, but I think it's extremely relevant and interesting. Marco is involved in this work, and you do this work together with Nina Wallerstein, who is Professor of Public Health at the University of New Mexico. So.
Okay, well, let me just give 1 minute and then I'm going to turn it over to Becca.
Wonderful.
But so both of us are at the College of Population Health as faculty. Becca and I have worked together probably for 15 years, close to 15 years now. We have a Center for Participatory Research. I'm the director of the center, and Becca is the director of the Indigenous Health and Wellness. We don't even know if it's a section or what of our initiatives in Indigenous health and well-being. And Res Riders has been a project that she's been developing. It fits, I just want to mention that it fits very much within the Buen Vivir or Viver way of thinking, which is not that, you know, individuals are the ones who are at the center of the universe, but more that it's community centric, that, you know, the knowledges that come from indigenous peoples as well as just local knowledge is critical to the way that we can create healing and wellness and health in our societies. And that's true in Camara and it's true in every other place. But you'll hear from Becca an example of working within a tribal community where the knowledge and the cultural qualities and values and practices and just deep connectedness is what drives the whole show. And that's really what Buen Vivir is all about. We have other projects that we do together, but Becca graciously agreed to present this project, which is with youth. So Becca, maybe just do a minute introduction to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Good afternoon, good evening. It's morning here in New Mexico, so all our different time zones. I'm really honored and privileged to be in this space with you all, and I wish I could have caught some of the earlier presentations, but it was a bit too early for me to get up at 5 a.m. So my name is Rebecca Bre. I'm Hickory Apache, so from northern New Mexico. I'm indigenous from my community is located in northern New Mexico. And as Nina said, I've been working at the university for over 15 years and been privileged and honored to be able to work with my colleagues at Santa Clara Pueblo, who actually are the owners and implementers of the Res Riders project. And unfortunately, they weren't able to join today because they also sit on their management team for their community. And so they do a lot of, right now with COVID hitting a lot of our tribal communities here in New Mexico, a lot of our communities have been on lockdown. And so they have roadblocks and kind of really managing people coming in and out. And so my partners are part of that management team and weren't able to join because they're working at the checkpoints and helping to just be part of that team. So I'm here to present, and I've had permission from them to be able to present on behalf of the community and our partnership that we've been able to establish. So am I able to share screen?
Yes.
Okay.
You should be. Yeah, great.
Awesome.
It works, Rebecca.
Okay, great. So again, so this is Santa Clara Pueblo is the name of the community, and Capo Kids is one of the initiatives that started with that really kind of was the streamline that began one of the initiatives with the youth programs that really kind of emerged out of Santa Clara that eventually led to the Res Riders program. And so just kind of a quick intro. And so these are my colleagues and partners. I wanted to be able to acknowledge them because this is their program. And, you know, so Jeremy Oyenke here is the director of the youth and learning programs. And so he helps to run all the youth programs that are within Santa Clara Pueblo, and Res Riders is just one of those youth programs. And then John Tafoya is the deputy tribal administrator for the youth and learning program as well too. And John here is standing behind the emblem from the community. And so this is the representative of their tribal seal. And so it incorporates, Santa Clara Pueblo is known for their Black pottery, a lot of artists that emerge from the community, but also the serpent, the water serpent, the avenue is also embedded into a lot of their cultural stories and traditions and has a really deep meaning to the community. And so just wanted to acknowledge that that's also part of the seal and the feathers. And so kind of merging these concepts of where the community is bedded into a lot of the programming. And so the history, just a quick, I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues. Kapua Winge is the Tewa language for Santa Clara Pueblo. So originally, you know, the people from Santa Clara, when they say Kapua Winge, that really kind of translates into the Valley of the Singing Water or the Valley of the Wild Roses. And this image here is an image of the Puye Cliffs, which is kind of the traditional homelands of the people. So there's a lot of quiff dwellings. And so this is like a really sacred site for the community. And so there's a lot of connection there that is still embedded in the community when it comes to regards to traditional practices and ceremonies. This is an area that is truly sacred. And so just kind of building off of that, and a lot of the programming that happens in the community is really centered around their language. Again, the Tewa language, culture and tradition. And so when we think about the programming that happens in the community, it's really centered in incorporating all of the teachings that come from the community into those various types of programming. And so just kind of giving a little bit of context for folks who aren't very familiar. So in New Mexico, here's the state of New Mexico. There's 23 different tribes within New Mexico. And so you have Apache reservation down here, and then the Apache up here, which is my community. This is where I'm from, the Navajo Nation. And then you have a bunch of 19 pueblos within this area. And so Albuquerque is right here, which is where Nina and I are located, in Santa Fe here. And so this is just kind of a blown up picture of where all the pueblos are. And so Santa Clara is here, which is about a good hour and a half from Albuquerque. And so when we work with the community, this is the travel time that I do with the community. And then a lot of the sports and extreme sports that I'll get into in working with the community happens within the area of Santa Fe in the mountains here. There's the mountains, this is where we go snowboarding. The river, there's a Rio Grande River that comes through the whole state. It's not very grand anymore, but at once upon a time it used to be grand. And so this is where we also do a lot of the whitewater rafting. And so just kind of being able to set some context in terms of relations of where on the community and the context of where the work that we do. And so just so also building upon, and so in 2011, there was a huge fire that really devastated the community. It started, I believe it was a lightning fire, and it really total burn area was 15,000 acres. And of that, the Santa Clara Watershed Creek area had been really impacted, and a lot of the traditional homelands and the canyon where I was showing where the Puye Cliffs, the whole canyon had been demolished from the fire. There's pretty much like 100-year recovery rate in terms of the amount of damage that the fire had. And the impact of that had really, because of the connection to that space for the community with regards to a lot of where a sacred gathering would happen, where ceremonial things would have to be harvested and gathered for different things were lost. There was a lot of kind of really impacted the community psychologically, physically, just, you know, there was this connection of grandparents and parents realizing that kids were not going to have that same connection to that space that they did, because they would not be able to go there and see the beauty and be able to kind of participate in the way that they did from generations to generations, where you're taking young ones up there to do part of that gathering or to be part of those in that space, that the younger generation was going to be disconnected from that because of the impact of the fire. And so through that process, there was a lot of kind of, I guess, a surge of different types of health impacts that were happening in the community. There was an increase of a lot of youth and adult crime happening. There was, you know, some juvenile kids, more youth were ending up in the system. And I think it was a lot of the context behind that was just, you know, people feeling lost to some degree and trying to figure out how to move forward in this time that was really a real hardship for the community. And so through that process, Jeremy and some other folks kind of started this initiative to figure out, well, how do we start to make sure that our youth are continuously engaged in the work? How do we make sure we're moving forward, you know, with purpose? We know that, you know, the fire has happened, it's devastated our community, but we need to make sure that we're building forward and that we're still incorporating a lot of our cultural teachings and those connections through our songs, through our practices of dance, but also just being engaged. And so moving forward with purpose, you know, they really wanted to build upon community involvement. How are we improving our health holistically, you know, in the context of that, reducing juvenile justice and youth crime, and then providing mentorship, leadership, and educational opportunities. And so that was a really key piece of this work. And so when they started Capo Kids, that it really started at a grassroots movement, you know, thinking about how do we get kids engaged. And so some of it started with just doing little projects, little community action projects where they would bring the kids together and they were doing some connecting with kids where they were at. And one of that places was using art was a place of that. And so they started doing murals in the community, kind of incorporating some of the hip hop culture with the traditional culture. And so merging some of those things together with the graffiti, but from a positive context into incorporating a lot of the traditional type of artwork as well. And so that kind of started this movement of Capo Kids, which really began just through a Facebook youth group. And then it just kind of grew from there with more programming happening. And so when Jeremy and John were building this program, you know, they're thinking about intergenerational mentoring. And so this top piece here, really thinking about it, you know, this is kind of this Western way of thinking about education, right? You go through 12 to 30, you know, middle school, high school, vocation, masters, you know, so it's like the step-by-step process that you move through. But when they were thinking about leadership development within the community, it's really that these are intertwined and there isn't a arrow one way or the other, and that people where people fit in this space varies at different time. And so you could have a youth be a leader here, and you would have an adult here be an assistant. And so thinking about it from a cultural standpoint as well in our communities, you know, with the loss of language through colonization and the loss of a lot of different types of cultural practices, some of those changes have been where you would see a reemergence in our community where some of the parents may not speak the language, but now the youth are speaking the language because it's being taught in schools, or there's more immersion programs. And so Santa Clara Pueblo does have an immersion program that they're building where they're trying to revitalize the language, and there still is a lot of language speakers in their community, but you have a space where some of the youth may be speaking better than their parents. And so in this kind of context of thinking about leadership development here, the youth would be the leaders in terms of thinking about language as their parent and mentoring their parents, you know, or mentoring other young people. And so really thinking about where people fit in this position of leadership is really different from this kind of context of where you move from middle school to high school to vocation school. And so as they continue to build upon their various youth programs in their community, there was another colleague of ours that Nina and I worked with in our center, Greg Tafoya. He was also an MPH student at the time in the college from the community of Santa Clara Pueblo, wanted to develop, had been thinking about this program that he used to develop his practicum, but it also stemmed from his own personal development of realizing, growing up in the community on the res, that he felt that where he excelled the most is when he was challenged through extreme sports. You know, he wasn't engaged in a lot of the traditional types of sports that we have here in the States with regards to basketball, football, which is different from the football internationally, not soccer, but American football and volleyball. So these things, for him, it was when he also saw himself as a risky kid. And so he gravitated to these really extreme sports of skateboarding and BMX biking. But that's where he felt where he was engaged the most. And that eventually led him to cycling professionally in Europe. And so realizing that, you know, through this different types of mentorship that helped him to kind of realign and redirect his level of using extreme sports as his avenue to get out of his angst and his anxiety, through those mentorship of thinking about how to use that sport as a way to build his self-development. And so he wanted to be able to develop a curriculum that also built upon that. And so through his practicum, created this Res Writers curriculum, which Res Writers stands for Reducing Risk Through Interpersonal Development, Empowerment, Resiliency, and Self-Determination. So that's what the writers part, stands for. Res meaning it's kind of like a slang language for the reservation. Here in the States, a lot of our tribal communities, we've been moved to reservations, and so the word res becomes kind of like a slang word when we talk about the reservation, and so it's incorporating those two. Res Writers, so it's just, it's tailored to engage Native youth in extreme sports as a way to kind of improve their self-confidence and improve problem solving, coping, leadership skills. We incorporate a lot of team building activities, and really thinking about how we're building our social networks. And we also really build upon tribal duties and expectations. And so there's, again, really tailoring and centering the work in the community, and that's driving the discussions around core values, optimism, and hope for the future. And thinking about our roles as mentors, and how we create these safe spaces. We've moved from, in working with our tribal community partners, from oftentimes we talk about community advisory boards. We've moved into talking with our teams about tribal research teams. And so we moved from CABs, community advisory boards, to tribal research teams, because that's really engaging our communities in research. If we start to own the word research, because research, as I'm sure internationally in all the communities, can also have at times a negative connotation in regards to working in communities, and that is also the same in our tribal communities. Research historically has never benefited our tribal communities, and so how do we start to historically break down that those fears of research and take ownership? And the way we do that is having our communities really be engaged in owning the word of research and what that really means, and how their participation in every step of the process is really critical and is driving the work. And it's only through their work that and their engagement that the projects can be successful for and the work that we're doing. And so working with our mentors, we bring in people from the community that are grounded in either their culture, their language. And so John here is here. So every day before we start, we always, again, kind of, so, and the presentation before talked about circle, this really importance of bringing circle together to have that conversation. And that's how we, the intentionality of that with Res Writers is there as well. We always start each day with conversations, bringing the youth together, setting the context for the day, and how we're gonna move forward through each of the activities is really grounded in that conversation. And so making sure that we have mentors at the table that can provide that mentorship and guidance in that way. And I'm blessed and thankful that I've also been able to be one of those mentors, working with the youth in the community, but also providing mentorship as well to our team members in the Pueblo, which also is, our TRT has become a really young TRT as well too. So they're earlier on in their development, in their early 20s. And so as us, we're coming from the university and working, how are we building their capacity and building their skills, or enhancing their skill sets so that they become better mentors, but also really understanding the work in its full capacity. And we also make sure that we're engaging and working with trained professionals, and so that we're not just taking kids out into these spaces without trained professionals. And this is one of our snowboard instructors. And so this is on our first day when we're taking kids out on the snowboard. And so I'll get into that here in a sec. And so Res Writers was developed in terms of thinking about it from a cultural standpoint, was developed by following the water cycle. And so also, really thinking about where we're taking kids into the natural environment, and building upon the spaces that are relevant to them and in their communities, and that has relevance in the songs that are sang, and the dances that are danced, they're all connected to the place places. And so building upon that is also a critical piece of the Res Writers curriculum. And so we start with snowboarding as our first piece of it. So we're up in the mountains. So our first day is when we take kids up to the mountain for snowboarding. And we do this for 5 days. And so we use the sport as the mechanism for helping kids to build their leadership skills. But it's about the intentionality behind the sport. And so the sport is what attracts the kids to want to be engaged in Res Writers. That we recognize that these activities are really privileged spaces, that oftentimes our kids don't have the resources or availability to participate on their own, because they can become really expensive. To go snowboarding is really expensive. To go whitewater rafting can get really expensive. And so how do we bring in our kids into these privileged spaces, but then also really grounding it in intentionality? And so before we start each day, again, we start with our mentors usually begin our day when we get up into the mountain with prayer, reminding the kids about, what's the traditional name for this mountain? What is the name for this place in our Tewa language? What are, giving thanks for this moisture, giving thanks for the snow that's eventually going to come down and feed into the fields of for the planting season. And so it's kind of a lot of that intentionality, but we also have really, and centering it in dialogue. And so for snowboarding, one of the first things we build upon is core values. And so really starting to have the kids start to think about what are their core values, what are the things that drive them. And so in our morning session, we'll ask them, we want you to think about what are some of the core values that are driving, what moves you, what are things that you're taught that are going to help sustain you for the future. And so at the end of the day, we have this debrief, and so the kids have to debrief what their core value is, who gifted it to them. And so each day of the 5 days that we're snowboarding with the kids, that's what our day looks like. So we have our morning session, we go through our lesson where the kids are learning, and snowboarding is really a physical sport. And so that's where that part where we're challenging them as well individually. And so it's using that physical space to challenge them to get out of their comfort zone. And then we bring them back together for the dialogue. And there's another discomfort there as well, because our kids aren't used to talking in these circles oftentimes. And so challenging them to speak as well too. And so that becomes a process in itself. So where they're challenging themselves physically, but they're also challenging themselves emotionally. And then we really try to incorporate a lot of that spiritual conversation there as well. And the kids have homework. If they don't know their Indian name, they need to go back and learn their Indian name, or learning their clans. And so our mentors from the community really incorporate a lot of the language and teachings into each of the sessions. And then we move into rafting. And so we do rafting 1 to 3 times out of the summertime. And so again, when we get up onto the mountain on our last day, we usually try to get up to the top of the mountain, and the view, I have a picture that I'll show here in a bit, shows like you can see the whole community all the way. And so we start to have that conversation. Where do we think the snow is going to go once it starts to melt? How is it feeding into the river? And that starts to prepare them for rafting. And here we move from an individual sport as well, where they're challenging themselves individually into a team building. Rafting really requires a lot of teamwork and listening and being able to get through the river in a safe manner. And through that is required to be listening and teamwork. And so we do that. So we build upon fears as well too, because oftentimes we have kids who don't swim, who don't know how to swim. And so there's the challenge of fear of being on the water because they can't swim. And so how are we pushing them to let them know that you're going to be in a safe environment, you're going to have protection, the life jackets, personal flotation devices. And then we have also trained people in the community also have been trained in swiftwater training. And so having folks from the community that can be able to do different types of rescue, but also the guides. And so making sure that we're incorporating all of those. And then we go into stand-up paddleboard for 1 to 2 days. And again, this is the time where we're on the lake as well. That is not a natural lake. This lake was created by a dam, right? And so we're able to have a conversation, and it's right by one of the pueblos. And, you know, so having these kind of environmental conversations with the kids as well, in terms of thinking about the changing of the landscape when this dam was created, how did that change the dynamics of the community below when it came to farming, you know, because the community, the tribal, Pueblo communities historically have been farming for generations to generations. And so when we have these conversations about the water coming into the community, how is that feeding and nourishing the community when it comes to the fields and the planting that happens? And so thinking about the dam and how that changed the community below when and the farming. And so building different types of conversations in based on our group that we're working with as well. And so we just continue to have these types of dialogues with our youth as we're moving through each of these sessions. And this is usually around, we take them stand-up paddleboarding around early August, right before they get back into school. And I guess I should mention snowboarding. When we do snowboarding, it's around February to March, and the community has to work with all of the school districts. And so in Santa Clara Pueblo, when the kids, the local school system goes up to 6th grade, and then from 6th grade on, the kids they'll go to different high schools, or middle schools and high schools. And that ranges from going at least maybe an hour to 15 minutes to an hour. And so then it's coordinating with all the different schools in that district and where the kids are going to get permission to for the kids to miss these 5 days of snowboarding. Rafting and stand-up paddleboard happen in the summertime, so the kids aren't really impacted with regards to their schooling. But that also talks about in terms of the support that the school systems have been able to provide for the kids to participate in Res Riders has been really phenomenal. But that's also because John spends a lot of time talking with the principals and the superintendents and really, you know, engaging with the kids and talking about the importance of school and making sure that that's always a priority, that being in this program is also a privileged space. And so, you know, making sure that those connections are made. When we move into high ropes course, again, moving back into team building, and we see a lot of kids challenged in this space as well too, because of fear of heights. We've seen kids kind of pass out sometimes to a degree on there because of the fear of heights and climbing, but always, you know, through the social support and building this trust with one another, that a lot of our kids continue to challenge themselves to each of those courses. We had one year, one of our kids, he was so scared because of his fear of height, was just shaking the whole time, but he continued to do it. Each time he continued to do it. So by the time we got to, by the time we got to rock climbing, he was just going through each of the different courses that we went through because he felt supported, but he also knew that he could do it because he faced that fear. And we do high ropes and rock climbing because we take kids from a man-made space into the environment, again, back to the environment, you know, and the challenges are different in both of those spaces. You know, rock climbing is, you know, being on the rocks and having to challenge yourself is really a mental as well as physical challenge, you know, because physically you're having to use yourself to pull yourself up, but then you're mentally thinking about, where do I place my hands? Where do I place my feet? You know, and so it's just really a combination of all of these different ways that our kids are being challenged and from this really holistic way of thinking. And then we're building all of that social support with the kids, encouraging one another, and they're mentoring one another in that way, especially when the kids here are the ones who may be a little bit more experienced or have a little bit more skill set, being the ones to encourage their peers to continue to move forward, or you got this, you can do that, you know, and then same with us as mentors. And as we continue to have these conversations and dialogues with one another, we're building those social networks. And so while even though the kids may come from the same community, if they're going to different schools by middle school on, they may not have that same type of relationship, a strong relationship. And so when they're in this this year-long program together, they're rebuilding that relationship and they're building those networks together to really engage. And so part of the last part of this is they have to do a community action project. What is something that they're going to do to give back to the community? And so the kids have to come together to determine what it is that they want to do to give back to their community. And so these are just some pictures that we have. And this was one of the big community action projects that the kids did. So this is their local gym, and it's also a place where a lot of community gatherings happen. It's where the tribal offices are. And so the president or the governor and their offices are here. So the gym hadn't been painted since like 1970. And so the kids really wanted to kind of bring the space back to life. And so this is what they wanted to do. You know, this is like a communal space. This is where they host gatherings. They have for around holidays and stuff. It's a place where a lot of people come together. It's also a place where people come to work out. They have the workout space here. And so they wanted to be able to give back aesthetically, a place where people felt welcomed and not such in this drab kind of 1970s yellow paint that was there before. And this was another one they did for the elders and the elders community. They wanted to provide to brighten up the space for the elders in their senior center. And so they did this mural for the elders. They've also done some around the holiday season, some things for the elders as well, and preparing for coming together. And so those were a couple of examples of some of their community action projects. And this is, I was talking about when we get to the top of the mountain on our last day, but back here behind, you can kind of see all the way to Albuquerque. And it's just such a beautiful view all the way where the kids can kind of see their own community. They can see a lot of the other tribal communities all the way, and just kind of reminding them about where they are in their place. But just wanted to share this example. And usually when we have more time, we'd kind of participate in this and asking people, you know, like, what is one of your core values and who gifted that to you and how do you apply that core value to your life? And that helps to kind of start to set the context of how people get to know one another. Because if you know what you're grounded in and you know what is driving you and who gifted that to you, that helps to kind of set the context for how you work with one another. And we also use that as, you know, when we hear from the kids and they say that love is one of their core values, but then we see them not working in that way in a sports, then we can remind them, well, I thought your core value you said was love. I don't think you're really practicing that right now. And so we use that as a process of how we engage back with the kids as well too. So I'm going to wrap up really quick because I know I'm over time here, but we also do a pre-post test as part of our for the research piece of measurement. And so we have a 3-page, and so one of the other components of when Greg created the curriculum, he also really wanted to create a measurement tool that was centered on a strength-based initiatives, questions, and not from a deficit base. Oftentimes our tribal communities and youth are often asked a lot of deficit-based questions. And so he really dug to look for a lot of surveys and questions that were really centered on really strength-based. And so the survey is grounded in brief coping, empowerment, gratitude, hope, and optimism. And so those are some of the predominant scales that are pre-post tests and measures. And so this is one of from our years 1 through 4 combined data. We've had 46 participants, 53% were males, 47% were female. And this is just an image of where the rock climbing, you can see all the different areas of where the ropes were, the different climbs that were designated there. And so just kind of some of the measures that we've been able to see, the brief cope measures indicate that Res Riders is helping youth stay busy, active, and engaged. And so in our brief cope scale, we've seen there's 8 different subscales within the brief cope scale. So there's 28 items within the brief COPE scale. And one of those subscales is the self-distraction subscale. And we've been able to see some statistical significance with that. And these two items right here make up this self-distraction subscale. So I've been doing things to think about it less, like going to the movies, watching TV, reading, daydreaming, sleeping, or shopping. I've been turning to work or other activities to take my mind off things. And so this is basically telling us that the kids are, you know, engaging more and different ways to keep themselves busy. So they're not just staying secluded. They're not just keeping to themselves. They're finding positive ways of being able to engage so that they're having healthier distractions. And then this measure here also trended towards statistical significance just on its individual item. And we've also seen some measures in hope. Our hope scale, I feel tired most of the time, was really strongly statistically significant. And that's one we're really excited about, because that means that kids prior to res riders felt tired all the time, and then post res riders that they weren't feeling as tired as often. And we hope that's part of the physical activity of them being engaged in these physical sports that are keeping them engaged, that they're continuously moving, and that they meet goals that they set for themselves, and that they're not worrying about their health as often. And then lastly, we've seen some measures in our empowerment scale. And we hope that this is part of the conversation and dialogue that we have with our kids, centered in the community action projects, but also just in the various conversations that we have with them throughout the year when we're engaging in different spaces, and that they understand quite well how their individual problems are connected to bigger problems at the community, state, national, global level, and that they can explain to others in their community how problems are, as a community, are connected to bigger problems at the state, national, and global. So, and then just some, we also do a focus group. And so these are just some of the quotes that we've had from our kids. And we give gear to our kids. And so on our last day, this is our last day of snowboarding. On the 5th day, you can see all the kids wearing their hoodies with the logo, which has this Res Riders symbol on there. And so it's really awesome to see our group when we're coming down on the mountain with our hoodies, and just kind of on a warm day. This was still on a warm day towards late March. And so all you really needed was a little bit of a hoodie. But and so this is our information for Jeremy, John, and myself as well. Sorry to zip through that really fast, and I know I went over time.
Thank you so much, Becca. Fascinating story, and how could I interfere with your talk? It was just too good. Thank you so much, and you're opening new venues and new worlds to all of us, I'm sure. And you know, seeing how much you are embedded in the community, and the local history, acknowledging the importance of the tribal community is extremely relevant. And actually, when I was listening to his story, and I will share that information later, I was in Armenia for a couple of times, where also very active youth participation is taking place in the poorest communities. And it reminded me very much of the way you are working. So happy to share that information with you.
Oh, that'd be great.
So let me just also say
Nina,
that
please.
The tribe has been able to bring resources into Jeremy and John have been able to bring resources into this program through applying to our Department of Justice. And the goal of the Department of Justice funding is to reduce crime. So the Department of Justice is seeing this very positive approach that is really oriented towards hope and optimism in kids' future as a way to actually meet the Department of Justice goals.
Yeah.
So, you know, the tribe doesn't have this money. Otherwise, the kids definitely do not have the money otherwise to participate at all. So this has been, now it was a 5-year funded project, and now the tribe just got refunded for another 5 years. And the other piece is that this is the tribe got the money, not the university. The tribe has we helped, or Becca helped the tribal colleagues write the grant and whatever, but the money is in the community, which is really different than a lot of what universities do. So it's a really beautiful example of a partnership where when money matters, that the money is really centered in the community and they're choosing how to spend their money. So I think this is a really bigger story around power and who has the power to make the decisions of what's going to happen there. It's in the community. So I just wanted to add that, Becca.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the community has also seen a reduction in the crime since Res Rider and a lot of the other prevention. So it's really there are other youth programming that they do in the community in connection and working directly with the court system. They've really seen a decrease in the juvenile crime, and the judge has also attributed that to Res Riders and a lot of the programming that the community has done.
And this is a community about 3,500 people. Yeah.
Can you repeat that, Nina? You said that twice.
This is a community of about, it's a tribe, it's its own nation. I mean, we talk a lot about tribal nations here. It's a government, it's got, you know, autonomy, and it's about 3,500 people in the community.
Thank you. Okay, it's fascinating. We have time for a few questions. So if you want a question, just raise your hand with the button you have on your screen. And I saw that Marco, you raised your hand, but yes, Marco, I give the floor to you, and please.
Não, é uma pergunta porque é muito interessante ver os 0,008, 0,005, 0,003. O que é mais importante? O depoimento do juiz dizendo que houve redução do crime devido a esse trabalho, ou o 0,00 significante? Por que o 0,005? É isso muito americano. Is this American? Por quê? Por que o 0,00? Por que a escala? Por que isso?
That's how we get our funding. That's how we're able to get our funding to support the programs through our National Institutes of Health. They won't fund us without that type of data. So unfortunately, in order for us to have these types of programs, we have to embed those types of data analysis and data collections into our program, else we won't get funded.
Yeah. But I think as a team, we're very connected to the narrative, to the story, to the real practices and policy changes and the lives of people. And we do as much in trying to do focus groups and collect stories and really understand the kids. And I mean, but we in the US have to do this very empirical positivist science to get funding. And so we know the value of the story and the value of the culture. And we also, I should just say, you know, it's also very Paulo Freire based. It's all on dialogue, all listening, dialogue action. You know, all of our work, Becca and I have a lot of other work together. It's all very Paulo Freire based, which is, you know, like she talked about completely. It's dialogue, 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 and the kids driving that and learning from the mentors and being mentors themselves. And, you know, it's very,
yeah. I guess another point of that, I mean, Marco, a way to think about this in terms of our leadership. So one of our students from our first year when we ran the program, so we also bring the kids back. We also bring like 1 to 2 kids back the following year to serve as mentors. And so they're participants in the first year, and then they come back as mentors the following year to kind of step up into this different leadership type role. So we have one of our students who was in the first year when we ran the program, came back as a mentor. Now he's being hired at the recreation center as a youth recreation mentor. So he just graduated high school this past year. He's doing college, but now he's just also gotten hired. And I think when he started the program, he was in 8th grade. And so I think that's kind of the sustainability and long-term of thinking about it as well too, that he went from a participant to a mentor. Now he's hired, now they just hired him within the program. So I think that's another attribution to the work in terms of people staying connected in the community, but also knowing his own leadership skill development to be able to continue doing the work. And there's actually 2 of our students that have been in that position. We had another Res Rider student who was a little bit older, but also was in college and came back and was hired by the program as well too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone who would
May
like?
I suggest, Ruf, that we could move to the questions for tomorrow, because we have to be respectful for all the colleagues, and you're probably aware that it's 15 past midnight for some of our colleagues on the other side of the planet, and I think we have to stop and to come back together. I personally have many questions.
I just want to say that Becca and I are not necessarily here tomorrow.
Oh.
We have a huge college, other things going on in our own institution. So any questions for Becca?
Yes.
I'll try and join in the very beginning of tomorrow, but I have to drop off soon. I'm not there the whole time. I don't think Becca's joining at all. So if anybody wants to ask her a question, you should do that now or send her an email. But I don't think, I can't,
you're right.
she is not going to be here tomorrow. So just if there's other questions for Becca, please, those who have to leave.
Let's leave a question to Raul, because Raul is from Argentina, very far from Brazil, and then it's more important for him to ask a question. Raul.
Good.
Thank you, Marco. And the other reason is that we are in the extreme of the planet. We are very far from the rest of the world. So, just I want to let you know, Rebecca, that it was fantastic to listen to you. It was a life experience. And I have so many questions that I think that we get in touch in the coming time just to share some thoughts. And what I'm going to do is just to react to different things that you mentioned, and if it's possible to get your reaction.
Sure.
The first comment has to do, well, just to let you know, the mentoring issue is not something popular in the Spanish-speaking countries. So mentoring is not something that is familiar for us. I mean, we know the word, the meaning, but it's not something that is part of our everyday life or our research. So this is a concept that is difficult to introduce in the way we approach things. And you brought another concept, intergenerational mentoring. So this is something extremely new for me in terms of listening. And when you mentioned this word, when I think about intergenerationality, I think about time. And the issue of time has been raised during this seminar, this meeting, in terms of the issue of sustainability that has to do with time, in terms of the life course perspective. That's something that Didier mentioned in the opening session. And also in terms of what you mentioned about positive life trajectories. So the issue of time comes on in different moments. And in this sense, just integrating the cycle of winter to fall is perhaps another way to understand time under the indigenous cosmovision. So this is one thing that I would like to get from you, a reaction on the issue of time, the time issue. The second issue has to do with resiliency, that you in one moment move from the concept of resiliency with an individual approach. And from my perspective, the individual approach to resiliency is a very Republican in terms of giving strength to all individuals that they have the capacity. And I would like to get your reaction in terms of thinking resiliency as a social fact. And perhaps this is related in some way or another in terms of moving from individual activities or skills to team working. That is something that you raised. And I found really very interesting the issue of bringing sports and some so-called technologies as a kind of syncretism of bringing new sports or new wave of life, of enjoyment to this group. And in this sense, the evaluation, I feel that is very individualistic, and I would like to get also your reaction in terms of bringing a more, I would say, team evaluation or social component evaluation. And I love to listen Nina, where she mentioned that the outcome is going to be a long-term outcome dealing with social justice or the juvenile justice system, because something that we know from the policies of the governmental policies, the US government with indigenous community is a way to perpetuate the power with indigenous community, dealing with gambling, chronic diseases, and I feel that your presentation is really inspiring in terms of breaking this cycle. I'm sorry for speaking so much, but I must tell you the truth. I wait a whole life to meet you. So that's the reason why. no, just, but I can tell the same to all the group, but this is the point. We are taking advantage of this opportunity. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's a really honor and privilege. And I wish my colleagues were here as well to be able to speak on that. But I mean, I can talk about, I think a lot of, from the mentorship, but also the individual and team, I think a lot of that is also just centered in as Indigenous people, that's already grounded in who we are as Native people in our communities. And so kind of thinking about how we're just translating that into the work in the research. And so in this concept of time, a lot of our tribal communities, we also have our traditional calendars that we follow that are different from the cycles of this Western cycle of time. And so there's a lot of that embedded, and that's also incorporated into the work that we do as well in the communities, because timing is important. And when we're thinking about what's happening in the community during certain periods of time, because there's certain times in the year where there's really a lot of traditional things happening where the community is not going to be active and participant, because what's most important is the cultural doings that are happening in the community. And so taking a step back from the research and realizing, okay, this is a time where we're not going to be able to run certain types of programming because the community is going to be busy practicing what's most important to them. And that's, you know, things that are central to the longevity and sustainability of cultural sustainability, really. But I think in terms of the mentorship from the individual level, when you think about it from a cultural standpoint, there's also that piece of the within how we learn individually from either participating in the different, you know, in Santa Clara, they have practices of dances where they, you know, practice as an individual, but then they come together during the time of when their ceremony or their feast days are happening, where they're dancing collectively, right? And so they're individually having to practice and put the time into that. But when it comes to the actual ceremony, they're dancing as a collective. There's a team. And so I think there's a lot of that already kind of embedded in the community in terms of how we learn and how and so we're just building upon, I think, concepts that are already embedded in our community and how we're talking about it. And from a mentorship standpoint, I think we just follow what's already in the community and that kind of thinking. But I really appreciate your thoughts in terms of thinking about how we look at our evaluation from a more collective standpoint. And we do that. We do focus groups with the kids. We've also done focus groups with the parents as well, too, to hear from the parents what types of changes that they have seen in their kids. And I didn't share all of this. I was trying to, you know, keep the presentation as short as possible, the 20 minutes, but we do have some data as well too. And so when we give back the data to the community, we share that in a way that's more different from what we would share to the Department of Justice. You know, the data that we would share to Department of Justice, we share variously differently back to the Tribal Council. We do storytelling, we bring those narratives back in so that the Tribal Council is recognizing that that this is having that impact. But they also see it too, because they see the kids. We've actually had Tribal Council come down and have, you know, join our meetings when we're meeting in the community. And so knowing that they're connected in that way as well, I think is really a testament into the support that the community has for the program. I hope I answered all your questions. So you had a lot of questions in there. Resiliency, I think our community is embedded in resiliency from just the colonial colonizations that our communities have had to suffer for the past 500 years. And so I think it's just embedded in who we are as Indian people, but it's also a lot of changing times. And so having those conversations with our kids as we continue to move into a more technological spaces, right? And things that change in our communities, how do we keep them grounded in where we are in place, right? And so I think that's the importance of the environment. And so keeping our kids connected into space. And so when we're out in these natural environments, they're away from technology, they're away from their cell phones, they're in the space and where that their songs talk about, and when they're dancing and the language, when they're doing prayers, they make prayers to these places that we're taking the kids to. And so reminding them, this is where our ancestors came from. This is the area that feeds our people. These are, you know, the water, the importance of water as being our first medicine. You know, this is what nourishes us as Indian people. And we see water as our first medicine. And so how do we have those conversations with them? That's really integral to the work. And so I think those are really what helped build some of that resiliency, is just, you know, reminding the kids, if they're not connected to it in their own home, that they can get connected through this programming, through their mentors in the community, but also through their youth peers, you know, some of the kids who could be more connected culturally and spiritually, you know, in their based on where their family sits in some of the cultural positions in their community. Some of the kids could have some more knowledge in that sense, and they're sharing with the other kids in that way as well.
Obrigado, gracias, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Goofy and Didier, let's finish up.
Yeah, I think so, because we also have a major faculty meeting coming up. So
Thanks a lot.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot to all of us. We have to take our time. We have 2 days. If you can join us, Nina and Becca, it would be great. But we have your email address, so we can communicate. What I just would like to ask you is to fill the form on the WooClap, because we would like to work tomorrow on the basis of what you consider as being the building blocks of this framework we would like to define all together. So we're gonna meet tomorrow, morning or afternoon or night, depending on where you are. But please take 5 minutes just to fill the WooClap, just in order for us to be able to work on what we consider as being essential. Take care. See you tomorrow. Thanks to all of you. It was absolutely great. And thanks for the talk. Thanks for your contribution. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Didier, are you still here with us?
Sure.
Okay. So we continue with our preparation for tomorrow?
Yes. Well.
Wow. Man.
Woman.
That was an ending. Mute, unmute.
I asked Marco something very concrete, Ruf. You know, in French and in Portuguese, we use the word, you know, éducation populaire, which is éducation populaire in French, which comes from the work of a Paulo Freire, describing the kind of project that has been described, which is not from school, it is informal, and it is based on autonomy, citizenship, commitment. What's the English word to say that? Paulo said perhaps popular education or community education. How do you call that, based again from the philosophy of emancipation of Paulo?
Didier, Nina has asked popular education. We do say yes, we are free-based. Nina asked popular education.
Okay, she said it's okay. So it means in English you can say popular education. Okay.
Okay.
How was people? Do you think they would, we haven't controlled very clearly the time, but I think that what's your criticism for that? Or you think that is normal because we had the first day, we should give people the floor? I don't know. How your evaluation of our first day?
Sylvia?
Sylvia, you go first. Sylvia just moved to another room.
Okay, so
family has to get ready for dinner, I guess.
What do you think, Rolf?
I think yes. I mean, in fact, if you look at the setup of the workshop, the first day is quite classical. You know, we have the introductions, and we tried to be interactive, and we did, I think, as much as we could. But then we have the classical case study presentation, and yeah, I mean, then it's, and we tried the interactivity in that. But I have much higher expectations for the actual participation process for tomorrow, where we really have the people talk. So I think, you know, basically the input, I think the quality of the introductions was very good, and it gives a, you know, it gives a good input for this framework thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because all the people here have experience with participation, so they have, I'm sure they have been triggered, but we don't really know because there was not a dynamic interaction amongst the participants during this meeting. But I think, you know, quality.
Let's wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow, maybe.
I'm high, yes, of high expectation for tomorrow, but the tone was set for me in a very good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sylvia?
Yes. Well, yeah, I agree. The presentations were good. There was a lot of input. Concerning time-wise, it was maybe a bit long, but sometimes. But yeah, I think tomorrow we will practice our participatory way, and then we have to see. And I watched Who Clap, and already 18 people contributed during the last session. So people, I think people are actually triggered to think and to contribute. So I think it's good.
To feedback to people these WooClap things, is there a space in our interactive mode that we fix for tomorrow? Some space to feedback these WooClap, or this WooClap is just for us, or it's just for the future? What do you think about this WooClap thing?
I think it's good to share at the beginning tomorrow, because if we ask people to do something, it's always good to actually show the results, you know, so they don't know that we are actually...
Please just share to us, for us to see the mode, how the things...
Sure.
Yes, I think this is important because it's a good introduction to the second day.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the second day we will have this work group, and then it could be something. It's not extremely rich, I would say, because I can't check on my WooClap, but I think it's a good start. It's a good start.
And we ask, just as a matter of consulting you, to ask each people, not the one who wrote this, but we can, Didier read the first one, Goof the second one, Marco the third one. When it's in Portuguese, somebody from Portugal, what do you think for tomorrow, just as a matter of presentation of the WooClap, asking people, Goof, what do you think? Asking people to read instead of giving to people to see only, what do you think?
Well, I think it would be nice if we could make this more visual. Because WooClap has that. Now it's just very straightforward, right?
Yeah, but this is not readable.
No.
And else you have the word cloud, so it's not.
Okay.
That doesn't work for.
I think the idea of Marco is very good because we have to make it to interpret it
exactly. Then you have the translation.
So
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
we have
yeah.
to say it, and I suggest that we share exactly as you say. For example, the first one for Sylvia in English, the second for you, Marco, in Portuguese and in English. We have to find a way to be sure that it's really inclusive and that everybody is able to understand. But yes, I fully agree with the idea of reading it just to launch the day, to say, hey, guy, you didn't lost your day yesterday. We learn from each other's.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And I think that as a task of us, as we have invented this meeting, this workshop, to have a report from the meeting, and then these things can be useful, no?
Yeah.
And also, how about the chat? Is the chat get by the recording process as well?
Yeah. Yeah. We have that. Yeah.
Good. Okay, then we have elements here, we have the videos, we have a lot of things here that we can organize something to feedback people later on after the meeting.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So we begin by that. Do we ask people to reflect, or do we launch immediately the first activity?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is also what I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your answer? Because I didn't hear what Marco said, and then
I was saying not to have reflections, because if we have reflection, people will be rested. And then they will keep talking. And I think that just as a feedback for people, we read and we say that we are going. This we will feed our report after the meeting, but then we go to the activities. I think so. Yeah. What do you think? It's just my opinion. It's not an imperative, Marco. It's just
no.
Is that all right for you as well?
Yeah,
I have
perfect for me.
One more suggestion. If we go before, I mean, we have the people reflecting on the WorkLab contribution, and the ones who haven't said anything are also invited. You know, to say something. I think, or we could encourage them to complete WorkLab while the others are already talking, because I think it's important that everybody has a say at the second day. You know, there are people who have not maybe added something. Then,
how about the breakout rooms? Is this easy to make tomorrow?
I will make them. Because we would like, initially we wanted to have 2 breakout rooms in Portuguese speakers and 2 in English speakers.
Yes.
And we have 2 or 3 people that Sylvia and I were not sure of. And then, you know, in the meantime, when this round is taking place, because everybody has to be in, and only then I can make the breakout rooms, you know. When people come in late, I can allocate them to a breakout room. But so the question is, do we want 4 breakout rooms, 2 Portuguese, 2 English, or do we want 2 breakout rooms that may be rather big?
Too big.
Too big, eh? So better have a group of 6 to 7 people.
Yes, maximum.
Yeah, max. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I said, I share that with you. I think it would be nice to also have a short listening exercise. I do that in my participation trainings, because people talk a lot, and you know, when we do participation, listening is a very, very useful skill. And I think that we do that before they go into the breakout rooms might be quite nice.
Yeah.
Just a very short practice. They go into breakout rooms with somebody else, do the exchange of time in maybe 2 or 3 minutes each, and then come back.
Good, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice.
Is that okay with you?
Yes. You are the leader tomorrow, and you can do as much as you want.
Leader by consensus, right?
Didier and I was not very good in terms of restricting people. But sorry, I'm very sorry, because you say about asking question after, and then I said, oh, Raul, I didn't expect him to make a very, 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 very big question. I'm sorry. Sorry. And the big, big, big answer as well. I'm sorry.
You know why? This is just because Raul fell in love with Becca.
Yes.
So he has to say that. It was too important, too hot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But anyway, just 30 minutes late. I think that was not very bad, because, I've been getting very good reactions of people saying that the meeting is good, the meeting is important, the meeting is interesting. The reactions are good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
One technical thing. I need, I think, about 2 or 3 minutes to create the breakout rooms. So then it's not nice to also lead. So I think we can do it by improvisation, with you both, and then I fiddle with the breakout rooms. And I've done it before. It's not a problem, but
so you do that, Marco, because by definition it takes at least 1 minute to authorize people to go. So with the manipulation, it's probably 2 minutes.
At least, yeah.
Then prepare a little song or a little story or the introduction of your children book. So that's your responsibility.
Okay. Okay, I'll try. I'll prepare something. Okay.
Just before we launch the work group.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it would be very nice.
Good.
Yeah. And then we have 2 rounds, right? We have 2 rounds. So question 1, you go in the breakout rooms. They discuss the question 1 in the breakout rooms.
Well, 3 questions. Huh? It's 3 questions.
3 questions. Okay, for the first round.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God, and 4 questions for the second round.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
I'll share the screen.
Okay. That's quite a lot of questions.
Yes.
Because, we have 4 groups. Each group will present, and they will present on 3 questions.
Yeah. And what if we assign a question to a group so that every group has a different question? But then we have 4 groups and 3 questions in the beginning.
No. I'm not sure about that. But Marco and DJ, how do you see that 4 in front of you, So they talk about 15 minutes, then we reconvene and have about 35 minutes for the feedback from 4 groups. So practically that means 8 minutes without any break, non-stop feedbacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think about main messages, 5 minutes of main message, and we ask people
3 minutes per feedback. Okay.
And how about to put that Padlets in the groups, and then people can. Do you know how to provide these Padlets?
Sure.
For each group.
Yeah.
Or each group put there the main messages, not the wrong group, a main message of discussion in terms of genuine, what's critical, and how to continue sharing knowledge.
Yeah, and they put that in the chat.
Yeah,
chat on the screen.
No, the Padlet. Each group has got a Padlet. Then a Padlet is something that I've been in a meeting where they put the Padlet in the Google Drive, and each group has access to this link of the Google Drive, and then everybody has in the plenary access to the Padlet of all groups at the same time.
Okay. We have to
Do you know how to make this, Sylvia?
I've never done it, but I'm sure
we work with Google
I can figure it out. Yeah, but not the pad. Yeah, of course, you can put it, but Valerie knows how to do it. So, but she doesn't have time, actually.
would be nice.
Mm-hmm. I'll figure it out.
Sylvia,
Okay,
will
I'll try to figure out as well and send you some idea. Okay,
that would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Oh yeah. Okay. And then we do that. We have a break, and then we do the same story for the second part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We have to be very clear tomorrow about the fact that 3 minutes going to be 3 minutes, not more.
You know what I like to do?
If not, it's
work with
boring, you know.
Timer. So we'll work with a timer, so everybody will hear the bleep.
Oh, good.
Then, yeah, beep, and then they will. I will ask them to finish, and then refer to what they've typed down in the Padlet.
Excellent.
Maybe 3 minutes, even too long. But we'll see. Let's try 3 minutes. 1 minute for each question they've, because we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Good. I have to leave you because I am teaching at 6. It
Okay.
means in 15 minutes for 2 hours.
Wow.
I just would like to go to the restroom and to focus on my teaching. We are okay for tomorrow. I'm very happy with this first day. So this is exactly what I expected.
Sylvia, I'm going to share with you the Padlet.
Also, in that 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. We're having 2 conversations at the same time.
Yeah.
This is
Okay.
the Padlet.
Bye, DJ. See you tomorrow.
Okay, yes. See you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you able to see this Padlet?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The Padlet goes white, blank, and people fill here. For example.
So we make a column for each question, or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And now group one, question 1, question 2, question 3. Group 2.
Oh, yeah.
Our school used it when the schools were closed, but I never created one, so I only watched.
Okay, I'll get more information from the people who organized that meeting that I was in. There was Padlet, and you also try to find something, and we exchange during the day. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to get up very early then.
I have to stay up very late.
Yes.
It's what
No, in 1 hour more or less, I'll try to give you some information, Sylvia.
Oh, that's good. And then we can, Sylvia and I can look at it tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And then we'll, I think we'll have a few revisions, some details in the agenda. So we're, at least for us, know the process. And the small details. So we work on that tomorrow. Yeah. Sophia, about 9:30, is that a good time for you tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Marco. And
thank you, Marco.
Look forward to your book.
Okay, I'll send you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.